Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Stephanie Wolf, and I am the Membership Relations Coordinator here at Population Connection. I'm so excited to mark World Rainforest Day with you all as we learn more about the work of one of our global partners, Women for Conservation. On the call today, we will be hearing from Isabella Cortes Lara, co-founder and director of conservation. Isabella is a fierce advocate for endangered species protection, the rights of the LGBTQ community, and the rights of Indigenous communities. She has a BS in wildlife and fisheries management and conservation ecology, and is currently pursuing an MS in natural resource conservation at the University of Kent in England. We also have Emily Knudson, the Director of Outreach and Philanthropy. They have over 10 years of experience working in intersectional environmental justice advocacy, and Emily holds BAs in environmental studies and Spanish, as well as a master's degree in international women's and gender studies from the University of Granada in Spain. Thank you both for being here today and for sharing your work with us. To the audience, if you have any questions for our speakers, please drop them in the Q&A box that is found at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do our very best to get those answered during the Q&A session, which will be moderated by our senior analyst, Hannah Evans. And then for any questions we don't have time to answer, we will provide written answers along with the recording of the presentation, the slides, and access to the chat box discussion. Now that's all the housekeeping items for me. We'll go ahead and jump in and get this presentation started. I will turn the floor over to you, Isabella.
Hello, my name is Isabella Cortes Lara. I'm so grateful for being here and having this opportunity to showcase the work that we're doing in Colombia, and for the opportunity to present for Population Connection, which has been a wonderful partner and has helped us get to the next level. And we have been able to get aid to so many women across Colombia, and we are steadily increasing our reach and becoming international, which is our dream. And I apologize for if I get emotional or sentimental. It's because I am allowing myself to be vulnerable, but that is not a result of being weak. It's just I feel very passionate about what I have to talk about and about our experiences. And my mother, Sara Inés Lara, would love to be in this meeting, but she is currently actually going to do a very important agreement with Colombian environmental authorities in 2 different regions with Corpus Cesar and some other parts in Antioquia to be able to increase the protection of rainforests. So that's perfect for today, Rainforest Day. And also, I'm so thankful for Emily and all of the support that Emily gives us, as well as Natalie and Diana and our entire team in Colombia. So I would like to tell you a little bit about our story, beginning with my own story. I have a hummingbird species named after me, and it is called Eriocnemis isabellae. My father discovered it in 2007. It's one of the most critically endangered hummingbird species in the world. And this, in the picture in the middle, is the male, and then in the bottom is the female. It's also known as the gorgeted puffleg. And it really marks my story. The little girl with the frog on her face is me. I've been involved in conservation since I can remember. I was really born into this and chosen to be a part of this story, I feel, from the womb. So one of the most important parts of my work is innovation and conservation by including new ways to engage audiences with the arts and technology, including music, art, dance, folklore, and taking a spin on Colombia's arts and creating new ways of telling stories, such as the Rana Chiva, which I helped to design. Chiva, which is a traditional bus to a school bus to be able to reach as many people as possible, and technology and training forest guards and using drones and GPS and other forms of application uses to be able to give technical support and to increase our monitoring. And my main goal is to make nature conservation as accessible and inclusive for all as possible. Can I get the next slide? And the second part of this is Sara Inés Lara. She is my mother. Sara and I are both from Cauca department in southwestern Colombia, and we come from a very difficult story of campesino family in rural Cauca, and in a region that is very high in biodiversity, that is known for páramos. So páramo is a very important form of water factory where it creates a lot of different species, like my hummingbird species, Eriochnemis isabellae, which is found in a region in El Cauca. And so we come from indigenous ancestry, which it is very important for us to work with the earth, and also to work with very difficult social stories. So we come from humble beginnings, and Sara suffered deep traumatic experiences from a young age, and is healing by helping girls who grew up as she did, and helping women in rural communities follow their dreams, while also promoting biodiversity. I believe that whatever God you may believe in, but I think that we were very blessed to come out of that situation. So Sarah is very much taking on the screen, or taking on the legacy. So Sara and the work established through Women for Conservation is a new approach, is the new era of conservation. While promoting biodiversity and science-based conservation, we are also working in holistic well-being and the entire well-being of a community by looking at what are the weaknesses in the community. Exactly, in El Cauca or in Sierra Nevada, looking at what kind of culture is not allowing people to go forward, and as well not allowing conservation to really thrive. And that all is connected and tied into what our mission is. And our mission is really connected to my grandmother, who is Amparo. She's the logo of our organization. Amparo is one of the women who really led a lot of social working in Cauca many years ago. And so she unfortunately experienced trauma and hardships of violence and poverty during years of civil war, and tirelessly worked to provide aid to women in these situations. So she died when my mother was 19, and she had to basically take on a lot of the responsibilities as a young woman, and she had me very young. So she had me when she was 20, and that in itself was very difficult. So our work really is created as a direct result of the hardships that we had to live through. And so our purpose is to transform trauma into actions in ways that will provide or improve women's lives, while also healing nature and providing opportunities through different models, and by uplifting women in rural Colombia to reach their full potential and strive for a better future for all, and heal the emotional wounds. So the project sites where we work are 10 different regions in Colombia. However, we also are partnering with grassroots organizations in Nepal and Madagascar. And as I said, our dream is to expand our projects internationally, and to at least have one project site in each continent. And why do we work in Colombia? Not just because we are Colombian, but because Colombia is home to 10% of the Earth's biodiversity. And there are hundreds of species that can be found nowhere else on the Earth, which are at great risk of extinction due to habitat destruction and degradation, such as Eriochnemis isabellae, my hummingbird species, but also countless other species of birds and mammals and plants that cannot be found anywhere else or are endemic. So these 10 project sites are very important, and we work with the nature conservation in each site to protect these rainforests. Some of the most important rainforests being Choco rainforest, Amazon rainforest, Orinoquia in the Piedemonte or close to Amazon, but also the Andean rainforest, and one of the most irreplaceable places on the earth, which is the Sierra Nevada Santa Marta. So the strategic approach is combining three main pillars. The three pillars being nature conservation, which is the strategies of how to recover species, such as the yellow-eared parrot, which is why the organization Proavis was formed. This is the yellow-eared parrot. The yellow-eared parrot was at 81 individuals and was recuperated to 2,300 in 2023. As of now, we have that census. And that is based on reforestation, habitat restoration, and investing in local community grassroots initiatives that have sustainable practices and reducing environmental degradation by not just treating the symptoms, but going to the source. And what are the sources? This is where it becomes complex. The sources of habitat degradation are due to socioeconomic issues or societal pressures. So we were very conscious in beginning this because there's a lot of different moving parts in Colombia's rural areas. And we believe that to have healthy forests, you have to have healthy communities. And that is where family planning is essential. And family planning is a way to focus on gender, but also to talk about violence and to talk about the different areas of where the women are not getting their opportunities. So family planning provides opportunities for women and allows them to focus on their paths and careers. And we work with local partners such as Pro Familia and Pro Aves, but Pro Familia provides healthcare professionals in most remote areas in order to be as inclusive as possible, which means giving and providing family planning and sexual education, not just to Colombians, but also to immigrants, Venezuelans, to different communities that are very far, which you will see in the next slides. And then sustainable livelihoods, which is very important in the socioeconomic sector, which is providing alternatives, because conservation has historically not given alternatives to the communities and has excluded individuals or the social component. So we believe that in order to create environmentally conscious programs, we must support women. And what we provide aid in is in training forest guards, supporting habitat restoration with different people in the communities, and programs that are women-led, and also by promoting and commercializing these different pieces, like the Embera picture there. This is from the Embera community, and this necklace, I actually just went to the Chocó portion and I was able to get this piece, and it is wonderful to see how many generations are continuing their art and their artisanal forms, which also falls under one of the important factors that sustainable livelihoods gives, is the ability to create community and to create spaces to get out of the routine, to make different pieces, to learn capacity building, training. Yes, so can I have the next slide? Okay, so nature conservation. Nature conservation is essential to train the next generation and to show the next generation why it is important to become consciousness. And why is it important to provide this? Because there are a lot of opportunities that are given in the community to men, but a lot of women are falling short in this area because they have different barriers, and those barriers being responsibilities, families, having teenage pregnancies, or not being able to obtain education and the training to support their families. So this is very important because conservation cannot be done without the community's involvement. Next, which brings me to the sustainability and sustainable livelihoods of training women to adopt this consciousness, but to put it into practice, which is applying the environmental education, applying this consciousness directly into training forest guards that are women, to allowing women to have the space also to build their financial independence. So this is one of the main reasons why we do this work, because financial independence in Colombia for women is very different in other countries such as England or the US. And there are still many taboos of women working or leaving their homes to focus on their careers or their education. So we have really worked through different avenues of seeing what is viable for women, and one of them being artisans with the emberaquetillo, or being forest guards in their areas, and also providing cooking classes for women who have small businesses or who are interested in doing home-based tourism and small ecotourism operations, where we want to really promote environmentally conscious ways of using or reducing the dependence on natural resources, so that they can increase their financial independence, but also at the same time create a paradigm shift where women are protecting nature and seeing nature as an investment. Next, please. And this is one of the most important parts of our conservation initiatives, but it is also the most challenging because it has to do with a large portion of the population and people who would not necessarily think that it is connected, but there is a very large connection between nature and human population, which, as we know, is very controversial in the US and the UK and other countries, but we see it firsthand in the global South, in countries that there are little resources in terms of helping through the government in different rural areas, and also in providing sexual education to girls and to young women who are getting married essentially as teenagers. So we support women by providing all of this, the accessibility to the brigades, which is by covering all of the costs to get to and from the brigades, as well as by giving them the tools by bringing psychologists, trained health professionals to talk about different things that have to do with sexuality, including cancer screenings, mammograms, cervical cancer, HIV, other STIs, but also what family planning method would be best for each woman, and providing contraceptive implants of 3 to 5 years. And women who are eligible to obtain it would obtain tubal ligations based on what the gynecologist recommend. So we give all of this professional care to women, and it has been a difficult journey, and I'll tell you about it in this next slide. So this picture is of a community in Puerto Pinzón near the nature reserve Baujil. So these sites are located in key biodiversity areas. This is a very important biodiversity area for the blue-billed curassow. And one of the first family planning brigades was held here, and it was so difficult to get nurses there and to be able to hold those meetings, because there was such taboo 15, 16 years ago about family planning in this community and many other communities alike in Colombia. But the taboo is that if women were receiving contraceptive methods, then they were doing sexual work, or they were interested in getting other partners, but not because it benefited them or their families. So the women were so afraid of their husbands knowing about this process that it had to be, they were basically asking, please, we need this to be done. And it was so difficult at first, but now we can see an immense growth of how people are participating, even men are participating. The paradigm shift is slowly continuing based on education and opportunity. So we believe that in 10, 15 years, there will be so much more openness, and perhaps even the society that is basically right now routed towards men being superior, we will see that women and men must work on a team to gain as highest human value for the entire of the community. So that is something that is important, because women are the mothers, and no matter what religion or background you are, every human being comes from a mother, a woman, and we need to continue to work through on that consciousness to be able to grow. And so we have this active project site, which is one of the most important. And the next slide. So healthy, I'll let Emily take over the side.
All right. Thank you so much, Isabella. So as Isabella was saying, our approach is based upon both their personal experience of being led by women from Colombia who have gone through a lot of these experiences personally, and also scientific data. So the data shows, and what we've seen in the field is that in order to have healthy habitats, healthy rainforests, communities also need to have their health needs taken care of. And a lot of the same initiatives that benefit biodiversity conservation and rainforest conservation also benefit communities. For example, one of the top solutions globally for climate change is ensuring that all girls around the world have voluntary access to family planning and education. And that would eliminate 85.4 gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere by the year 2050. So while that on a global scale can reduce the effects of climate change and global warming, on a local scale, it's also really important to be investing in these communities and building what we call climate resilience, which is a community's ability to overcome some of the worst effects of climate change, such as flooding, such as drought. But communities that have access to family planning are able to have resources to take care of their families and their children, and girls that have been educated are better able to overcome the same kinds of conflicts and environmental disasters that are causing so many species to go extinct. We also have this graph of the 6th mass extinction, which shows how population growth can also be connected to species extinction, a lot of times because of the unsustainable use of the rainforest and habitats for animals, which is why we are not only doing family planning, but also helping communities transition to eco-friendly jobs, sustainable livelihoods, become bird guides and feed their families off of ecotourism, and also become nature guides. So we are centering goals that both benefit the human populations that live around rainforests and rainforest conservation. And that includes voluntary access to family planning, helping girls finish school, which our family planning programs do, and also centering environmental justice and climate resilience so that these communities are set up to overcome environmental disasters that might be a result of climate change. And so what we do is we partner with Pro Familia, and Pro Familia is basically like the Planned Parenthood of Colombia. They're an amazing organization that has provided accessible family planning to a lot of people in Colombia, but their clinics are located in urban centers. So where we come in is we're actually facilitating Pro Familia to be able to visit some of the most remote spaces in Colombia, which might be 12 hours down the Amazon River in a speedboat, which may require them to take a bush plane into the jungle. But basically, the people that live in these super rural spaces that live in and around the rainforest, they would not have access to the health clinics and family planning resources that people in urban spaces have access to. So what we're doing mostly is helping those communities get access to family planning by bringing the services to them as mobile campaigns, or sometimes bringing the people to the urban centers. But by doing this, we've been able to provide over 1,000 families with access to family planning, which they never would have had if it hadn't been for us being able to facilitate the movement of those mobile clinics.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Emily. Yes, so this next location in the Amazon is one of the most important, and because we have so many very vulnerable species or endangered species like the giant river otter and the jaguar. So the jaguar in these areas actually have large ranges. Their home ranges can be hundreds of kilometers. So they need extensive forests to be able to reproduce and to hunt. And the Amazonian tapir, which also needs many different vegetation species, and the pink Amazonian river otter. So this is one of the most beautiful. I believe that the jaguars are part of our system, in not just in the habitat, but also cosmically and spiritually. So it has so much significance to try and to reach people on another level, on also why it's important to keep the cosmo vision for different communities and to keep these traditions alive. But yes, we are a growing population, which is a human species in these areas where resources are finite, and it is incredibly important to partner with people such as Population Connection, which has enabled us to grow in these areas, and which the Amazonian Reserve, we have been able to create also an education center, research station, and that is all in pro of bringing women to become one of the most important parts and to be women-led. But yes, I'd like to show you the video of the river otter, which is wonderful. We need to also take care of the water systems because there are so many pollutants, and mining and industrial pollutants are going into the water systems, which are threatening our species. So this is one of my favorites, and they're very charismatic, and they have incredibly complex social structures, and they are species that can swim many kilometers daily, and that depend on healthy fish populations, and those fish populations are obviously affected by human populations if they're overfished, overharvest, which is what we're seeing throughout the Amazon. Oh, it's not loading. But yeah, they're cute. I love them. And yes, one of the really important things to keep in mind is that although family planning may be in many areas, many urban places, it is free, but there are EPS, which is like health insurance, that are supposed to provide these services, but they don't provide them to people in inaccessible areas. So with Pro Familia, we had to take people, or to take the nurses in these bush airplanes, and also in boats. So that is a very complex logistical operation of bringing brigades to these communities. So that in the last 2 days of in 2 days of the Amazonian Brigade, we were able to give 86 women access to family planning, which is astronomical. Think of all of the people's lives that are in some way impacted, because these are women who don't necessarily have the financial stability to have another child, which is why it's so important to take into consideration the process of giving access. And Population Connection has been so fundamental in understanding this important step, because family planning is something that can help prevent violence in the household. It can help increase the woman's chance in being able to have her career, or to pursue her business endeavors, or to grow her family in a sustainable way. And especially families that have 7 hours of commute to this closest town. It's not even cities in these regions. So that is one of the most impactful process, or the most impactful part of the process. And I'd like to show you the next slide. So one of the most important success stories is Nympha. Nympha is a forest guard in the Amazon. She works in Aguilar Pia, but she is also now leading reforestation projects and in San Jose de Guaviare. And she is somebody who has dedicated her life to this cause of conservation and has risked her life, much like many other conservationists in Colombia do daily. And she has 3 children, or she had 3 children, and one of her child actually died. They drowned in the river, and it was awful. And her husband was a forest guard in the reserve of Aguilar Pia, and he actually passed away during the pandemic due to heart complications. And this is like a region where, like we said, it's hours and hours on boat to get to the nearest village or caserío. So it was very impactful, but she decided to stay and she wanted to continue her work in conservation. So we're so proud to support her. And this is an individual who didn't know how to read or write and who is now operating, using binoculars and GPS systems and applications on her phone and eBird or Merlin, bird identification in English and Spanish. So these are complex steps to get to the point where she's gotten to in the span of 4 or 5 years. So it's very important to take into consideration the on-the-ground leaders who are leading these causes. So yes, and then next, please. And one of the most important part is also involving men, because men have so much to do. Not just because we're women for conservation doesn't mean that we work with women. I am a very strong advocate of we must always talk about sexual education and be advocates of sexual education, not just with women, but talking with all populations, and especially getting men on board, because men cannot be seen as like the enemy. Men are so important in our communities. They're so pivotal. Their participation and the way that they raise their sons and raise their children is fundamental. And one of the most important stories is in El Chocó, which I really love these areas because they're so rich in biodiversity, but also they have such strong conflict and they have a lot of machismo. And working with these men that are open-minded to these processes like vasectomies was a journey. Woo! That was a lot of work. But once you get 1 or 2 men on board, then it's like everyone is on board. And so that is, or not everybody, but a lot of people. So it's important to take that into consideration, is that men choose also to do these processes to be able to step forward and to give forward to their family the best of themselves, because men are impacted just as much in their families. If they are having too many children, they obviously need some kind of financial stability to do so. And now Colombia's situation is more difficult. There's more challenges every day. And so we have to take that into consideration when doing conservation, is how can we involve men in gender inclusivity and be able to make it understandable for everyone. So family planning in Las Tangaras, which is near Antioquia, but it's in the department of Chocó, has been important because we have provided the transportation, the food, and taking people 4 or 5 hours from El Chocó to Medellin to do the whole process, to give them time to recuperate, to give them all of the information prior, to do multiple checkups, and so that they can provide the best version of themselves towards their families, because men are very important in sex. So we need to understand that we are both responsible, men and women. Next. Okay, and Zona Bananera and the Sierra Nevada is where I have most of my experience. I am currently doing my master's thesis dissertation on this area in the Zona Bananera, which is connecting Magdalena and Atlántico, the 2 departments, through Ciénega, and that region, which is one of the most important for freshwater and saltwater estuaries in the world. And the water systems that include the higher regions of the Páramos, but also the stars of the show, which have to be the birthplaces of the water. And one of them is Toribio River, the Toribio Rivershed, the Gaira, and these regions are incredibly biodiverse. There are more endemic species here than anywhere else in the world, and that is why it is the most important place for biologists to keep researching and to understand what richness there is there. And that is why I am so passionate about working in the Sierra Nevada. And next, please. The Zona Bananera is an area that has very limited opportunities for women. This is extremely hot, very, very hot area. There's one or two different labor or jobs that can be done. But the thing is, in that area, there isn't tourism. It isn't attractive per se for people to visit because it's high in child mortality. It has a lot of complex situations with conflict, and because it's such a transitory place, people are going from one end to another. They're going from one city to another, and this happens to be in the middle. And there's a lot of communities there, including Venezuelan communities. So those barriers are so evident in even just the most basic things that should be given, like education or in healthcare. So I personally have been leading in this area, and we've had waiting lists of tens of hundreds of people to get family planning. And these women there's a lot of Venezuelan immigrants, there's a lot of Afro-Colombian, there's also some indigenous communities, and there's so many barriers that have to do with the information, the communication of why. And so we see a lot of young girls there that are 15 or 12 or 13, and it's heartbreaking because some of the brigades that I've done with Pro Familia there, and with Kelly, who is with me in that picture, and then there's the leaders there who are the at-home people that when we can't have access to these small puestos de salud, which is like a point of health is the translation. If you could do the next one. Exactly. These areas, these little, like, we've filled them and had people lining up for blocks to receive implants or to receive the talks that we do, which, you know, not everyone is receiving family planning because not everyone is eligible to it. Not everyone has done the right preparation, but we have received many people that are pregnant already and that are shattered. Their lives are like, it's so heartbreaking to see women who are so looking forward to getting ahead or graduating from high school, who are, 15, 16, 17, and they find out they're pregnant there because, there isn't the culture of using condoms, of talking about sex, of STDs, or STIs, how they say in England. So these are high need areas with valuable people who are not receiving the aids that they need. And in some cases, we haven't had access to these puestos of salud. And for example, the community leaders open their houses up. And I'm talking like 20, 50, almost 100 people coming into someone's house, it's like to give the talks. It's a lot of dedication from part of the community. And none of this would be possible without that connection. Yes. Emily, would you like to add anything?
I can add more later. I was visiting some of these sites, and so I've heard some of the stories, and I can tell some of the stories of the girls, but you can keep going with the next project site.
Sure. This next slide, please. So actually this partnering with Population Connection this is one of the most important species that really put together the organization, Women for Conservation. So just as a background, Women for Conservation started as a program which was connected to ProAves, and ProAves saw the need of bringing this species back from the brink of extinction. And this is actually a mural, painting that I did of the species in Jardín for Jardín Exotics and for the Alcaldía, and also as a part of the celebration, because as a result, there has been a whole movement in Colombia now, because this species was on the brink of extinction due to losing habitat from the Ceroxylon quindeniensis, which is the wax palm, the tallest palm in the world, and it is Colombia's national tree. And it was being used because of Domingo de Ramos, which is the Sunday on Easter Sunday, which in the Bible, it's using the date palms, but in Colombia, they use this wax palm as the palm leaves, and this palm takes 100 years to reach maturity. This species that it is in, it isn't that palm that I'm talking about, but the palm is essential not just for this species, but for a plethora of other species that use it for nesting cavities. So imagine a palm tree that needs to reach 100 years. This animal, this species of parrot, needs that palm to die essentially for it to use it. So we're talking 150 years, 180 or 200 years to reach the point where it can have these cavities for nesting. So we're talking about a really big impact if they're being cut down. And mind you, it is a very important region, which is Tolima or Roncesvalles, which is the first reserve which was created for this species. And yeah, so the most important process is that we are continuing to get people involved, and we're continuing to get women, men, girls involved in this process in many different ways, not just in providing education, but also by providing health follow-up checkups to make sure that the implant is inserted correctly, to make sure that they're reacting to it in a way that is safe for them, because we all know that everybody is different. So tubal implants and tubal ligations have also been important, because those are only done in situations that are viable, and also vasectomies. So everybody is receiving multiple steps to get these more permanent forms of family planning. But implants are very popular, which you can see that are the majority of the aid that we give, because they are reversible. And we are slowly growing into other regions to continue to invest in this very important component.
And I can take over now for a minute, because I'm someone that comes from the United States, and going down to these villages and hearing these stories from these girls has just been such an incredibly moving experience. But I never imagined some of the things that these girls have gone through, and what a difference that family planning access can make for them. But more than anything, we're just promoting reproductive choice. And so people choose different things. A lot of the girls that we give family planning access to might already have children. In this example on the left is Linda, and she has one kid already, and she's 20 years old. And she chose to get the implant so that she can continue her career before she has more kids. In the middle is Ana Marquis, who's 18. And unfortunately, she's already lost 2 pregnancies, and it was a very traumatic experience for her as a teenage girl. So she chose to get the implant so that she wouldn't have to worry about getting pregnant again, and would be able to finish her school and pursue her career before she starts her family. And then on the right is Andres. She is 19, and she has 2 kids now. She had her first baby when she was 15. And she told us that she was too embarrassed to finish school when she got pregnant with her first child. And so now she's getting the implant after having 2 children, because she wants to focus on her children, make sure her children could get an education, and pursue the opportunities that she never got because she wasn't able to finish high school. But I just wanted to share these 3 stories as just moving stories about people that have gone through our services. And you can see that our programs can profoundly change the life of each of these girls. And we've given access to implants to almost 800 girls now, and 1,200 people in total. So every single person that we are able to reach with our programming has huge life-changing effects, and not only affects these women, but also affects their children and the level of education that themselves and their children are able to achieve. And so thank you all for being part of our presentation and for hearing all these stories. We have a matching donor at the moment. And so for only $25, we're able to provide a girl with access to this life-changing healthcare. So if anyone would be interested in donating or supporting our work, you can find more information on our website, and you can donate on our website. But right now is a great opportunity, especially because we have a matching donor up to $4,500. So for only $25, people can provide this life-changing healthcare to a girl. So thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody who, and also for all of the support that we have received from Population Connection. And in the future, we really want to take this to the next level and to continue our work in more remote areas. So your support is so fundamental to us as a small organization that is slowly growing and continuing different areas, and also to try and get more people involved on multiple levels. So thank you so much for any support. We are so grateful as well for this incredible platform to be able to speak about what we do and why we do it. Yeah.
So with that, I think we'll finish our presentation.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. That was really very moving and just incredible to get to learn all about the work, the very important work that you're doing from such passionate individuals. Thank you, Isabella, in particular, for your really personalized and passionate exploration into all of these issues. It was great to hear not only about how Women for Conservation is promoting environmental sustainability and social justice initiatives, but also your own personal story. I think it's all very related and just beautiful. So thank you. First of all, there's a lot of accolades in the chat. I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to explore that, but you should. Everybody's very impressed with the work that you're doing. So congratulations again. We do have time for a few questions. So I'm just going to get into some of the submitted questions, and then we can kind of facilitate a discussion. We've got about 10 minutes to do that. So first of all, there's a question that's just asking kind of more generally about the ways in which empowering women in particular to be guardians of nature benefits both the rainforests. We're here today to commemorate the International Day of Rainforest, which happened last week. So this question is kind of asking about how the empowerment of communities, but in particular women as guardians of nature, can facilitate better conservation for rainforests and for environmental sustainability more broadly.
Should I answer or? Yes, okay, I'll answer. So this is very important because we're looking at half of the population essentially, and it is so important because women are natural educators. So we want women to lead by example and to provide for their community the best opportunities based on like how their own personal growth is. So we're seeing that there's a lot of people who want to participate, but who aren't able to because of these barriers. So by removing those barriers, or by allowing women to seek new ways, alternative ways to grow, it's essential, because we're talking about women who are part of large networks of communication with themselves, with other parts or leaders, because women in Colombia have been, they've been subdued to different very difficult situations and violence, but they are also extremely powerful. So women are extremely powerful components of the community. I think that they don't need to be empowered. They just need to have the tools to be able to go to different areas, which they have been not necessarily like breaking through because of different barriers. So what I would love to see is, for example, I'm a young woman who has by a miracle of God, been able to get out of these situations. And now I'm on my route to get a PhD. So what would the future be like if there were more women like me, if there were 10,000 Isabellas in communities who were leading, who were creating, who were becoming stronger, who had time to work on their careers? Because if I was pregnant at 15 or 16 or married at 14, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. There's no way. Like, I wouldn't have the time or space to do so because I would have different priorities. So it's allowing women to prioritize on themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you. So well said. I think that ultimately this is about giving people the tools that they need to self-actualize and to become equal members in society. That's really well put. In terms of the connections between human activities and nature and environmental destruction, you were talking a lot, obviously, about the ways in which humans are influencing nature in negative ways through things like habitat destruction and species extinction. And I'm wondering if you could touch on the sort of relationship between the ways in which communities are destroying the environments and then also the broader sort of political and economic structures that are maybe influencing the destruction, also through things like extractive industries or, sort of capitalist enterprises.
Okay. I can't generalize for all of the sites, but I can certainly speak from my own personal experience. For example, in the Sierra Nevada or in the Chocó, that there's many communities that are definitely subject to changing times and globalization. And a lot of the communities are selling their land to different people. And in not all of the cases is tourism a viable option. I am a very strong critic of these different sectors because a lot of these areas are either being destroyed by mining or by deforestation for timber harvest, or one of the most popular being cattle ranching. But also tourism can bring impacts to communities in the sense that people will find it more attractive to sell their land or their ancestral lands or their family lands to different buyers who essentially come in and deforest large areas and put in like mega hotels or big really like lavish hotels or constructions. And if you look at different communities that have actually consistently held on to their identities and their communities aren't being separated or pulled apart, you can see that their old forests are more intact. So that's very important because as it is bringing development into areas, ecotourism and tourism, it does have its drawbacks, and it is something that has to be looked under with lots of scrutiny. And it has to be something that has worked in a way that the systems allows the people to take on their own operations and to lead the operations, so they're not selling the land and then working for the owners. So that is very important to keep in mind. And there isn't an easy answer to that throughout the entire landscape of Colombia, but I do think that a lot of the issues is that there's a lot of fault of consciousness. There isn't the knowledge that there are endemic species and that they are important to conserve. That is, people don't even know that in Colombia. So that is something that is missing fundamentally. So if that was seen as an investment as to keeping those forests, because it's going to bring, more interest in the future when there are no more forests in general regions of the South, then people will see it as something that they will invest, but they don't see it that way. They see cut forests as more of an investment than the actual forest. So that is the fundamental paradigm shift that needs to be changed, as well as people need to have a sense of ownership and need to be empowered to be able to lead these operations, that not everyone has that amount of like money to invest in an operation or to become certified or to become better at what they're doing with their business.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a paradigm shift that needs to occur throughout the world with everyone, right? Is to realize the intrinsic value in nature rather than looking at it as a resource to exploit or an investment in economic incentive of sorts. I'm just curious, touching on the ecotourism element, because there are a few questions in the chat about this. So the education about species protection and ecological stability and restoration is not facilitated through these ecotourism projects? Or you were saying you're a little critical about ecotourism. I'm kind of wondering, like, within these communities, why exactly that is. Just people are asking.
Because like I said, tourism inevitably brings issues. Like, for example, in areas that have been untouched, if there's a large quantity of people, it will bring large quantities of trash, or it will bring different issues to the society. Like, for example, a lot of people going to different areas that didn't go before, bringing crime, or bringing, for example, sex tourism, which affects different communities, and which actually there's a part of the coast which had been very affected by that 5-10 years ago. So even though I see that there is a lot of potential with ecotourism, and I see it as a way to divert a lot of energy from mining, which is more destructive per se to natural resources, there is no simple answer to conservation, and there is no easy fix. There's just isn't, because whenever you work with land and with people, there are immense multidimensional intersectional challenges, and intersectionality meaning different forms of oppression. So even though ecotourism has less impact than extractive practices or like cutting, slash and burn, it doesn't mean that it's a clean way of moving forward. It means that if you work and promote that, you have to be conscious of the impacts that it could have, and how to mitigate that, and how to talk with people, and how to train people to provide alternatives to that, and especially working with elder women or women in the community that can help promote that change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said again. Thank you. I think with these situations, they are just so complex and sort of systemically intertwined. So it needs to be approached situationally, but also critically, like recognizing that ecotourism is perhaps a step in the right direction in some cases, but not necessarily the overriding solution at all. Right.
Yeah, for example, the pandemic, when the pandemic hit in different areas of Colombia, entire communities were devastated because they only focused on ecotourism.
Right.
So then you have to think also ecotourism or tourism in some cases, because not all tourism is ecotourism. Even if you're going to the forest, there's, obviously diverse forms that you need to think about how you're going to mitigate those damages in the case of like a global disaster or climate change, for example, or how it affects water. So again, I invite all of us to think about these different scenarios.
Yes, thank you so much. And it looks like we're just about out of time here. I wanted to thank you guys both again for such a wonderful and interesting presentation, and just more broadly for the work that you're doing in conservation and women's rights, and fusing the two and really working to fundamentally and systemically change paradigms to facilitate a better and brighter future. Thank you so much for that work. I wonder if there's any final words that either of you would like to say before we sign off here. I think that many of us, whenever we're, talking about or thinking about environmental sustainability and climate change and deforestation in the future, it's easy to become very depressed by the lack of leadership and the lack of progress being made at the structural levels. But it's wonderful to see organizations like Women for Conservation who are proving that there's many amazing, beautiful, positive things happening on the ground every single day. So I'm wondering if there's a word or two of advice or passion that you could give us before we sign off here.
Okay, let me just say something and then Emily can say something, because I want to just tell everyone, like, even though I'm very happy and I'm very strong and passionate, it doesn't mean that sometimes I don't have really hard days and really just down, because it's hard, you know, things are really difficult and we don't have to always like try and be strong. It's okay to cry. Like, I've cried on camera so many times in the last couple of days. But the thing is, I really think that if we continue as a collective force to get together and to really just try and understand, we're all going through it, and everything, you know, it's going to get harder. But if we don't stick together as people, individual, any kind of person, we're not going to be able to make it. And that is tuning into that frequency and tuning into that love. Yeah. So Emily, take it away.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
just want to say thank you to Population Connection for supporting our work, for giving us a platform to share our stories. And especially, this is like a Colombian woman-run organization, but it's really important, and I think that's the reason why we're focusing on women's empowerment. But I think we're really thankful for your support and for giving us a platform to raise their voices. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. All right, well, we will sign off here. Thanks everyone for staying a little bit over time, and we will answer as many questions as we can in a follow-up email. So thanks everybody so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a great night or day.